Yeah, bye week over. We got some good work done. I think the guys appreciated last week, just in terms of like how it went, the time off, the practicing we did. Get a chance to, maybe more than anything is get rested up. I know a lot of times talk about healed up and rested up, but probably more rested up. And so it was good. And, on to a really good Utah team. Those guys are doing a phenomenal job, and Kyle always does. I mean, it's nothing different. I think he's playing exactly the style of football in general that he's always wanted to play, which is great defense and tough run offense, and and keeps defenses off balance with, some of the shots they take and those type of things. And so, big challenge. This team's probably, certainly playing as well as anybody around.
What can you share with us regarding Trelo?
Like I always say, this program's not for everybody.
Were you surprised?
Like I said, this program's not for everybody. I'd be surprised if everybody stayed in this program. We have 110 guys. You're not going to keep everybody here. It's not. And so if the program's not for them, they need to move on.
How much has Huntley improved as a passer from what you saw a year ago? Yeah,
I think he is, where I think he's really underrated is I think he does a great job in the pocket. As much of a runner as he can, like all scrambling quarterbacks, they can run, they can break your back when they get out of that. But where I see him doing like a really good job is in the pocket. He's slippery in the pocket, and he stays in the pocket until he just can't. And that's probably one of the areas where I see like, and again, I'm trying to think back to last year, so I don't really know, but just watching the tapes this year, that's where I really see, him being effective. Because a lot of times, the scrambling guys, they want to get out of there and run because they can get yards. And I just think he has a nice balance of he hangs in there and works the pocket until he needs to go. And then sometimes they get their hands on him. He still gets out of it and gets the ball off.
How's MJ Capisi doing?
He's doing well. He's practicing with us, and so he's doing well. He's, like I said, he's certainly on the week to week, being smart with him, all that stuff, but he's practicing.
Any update on Cheek on Play?
Cheek's making progress. Again, like I told you guys last time, that we really thought that was going to be a tough one, but he's making good progress as well.
And Aaron Fuller, how's he doing?
Same. He's practicing.
Jordan Chin being healthy, is it finally nice to see, given that he's been in the program so long?
Yeah.
Been unlucky in that sense.
Yep, no question. It really is. He's kind of had a tough path a little bit in terms of some injuries. Every time we thought we'd get him going, something would happen. I think he's had kind of two that have set him back. And sometimes when you get set back like that, it's just really hard to get back in the mix. And so he has stayed healthy, and he's, this has kind of been coming on here, I think, the last handful of weeks. I think we saw him make something in Arizona. In the Arizona game was probably the first time, but we kind of even felt him a little before, like his just the practice vibe, the practice tempo was just really, really good. And when those guys do that on a consistent basis, we just kind of always tell them you're going to get your opportunities in the games, and then if you make plays, you're going to get more. And that's kind of what his situation.
Chris, how much time did you spend over the bye week kind of breaking down the Oregon film and trying to kind of figure out?
Well, we broke down every game. Every single game we looked at. Backwards, forwards, sideways. So, that's what the bye week does. We don't the coaches don't sit around and like, okay, it's a grind for recruiting. So we've looked at all of our tapes, all of our situations, special teams, everything. So that's a little bit of the beauty of that. And then specifically to the Oregon game, like I said before, it's a heck of a college football game. we weren't good enough to make the plays when we need them. And it's 1 or 2 plays when you're playing it like that. I mean, we can go back to 5 plays. We make those, might be a different outcome, but we didn't. You know, and that's how it always is when you're playing kind of evenly matched teams. And, you know, like a lot of, you know, admiration for our guys in terms of how hard they play. And it's frustrating because there's just a couple plays you're like, really, we just couldn't quite make the plays in whatever phase it was. And, you know, that's where we are right now. We're just trying to get better.
Chris, I was curious, with the running back specifically, when you didn't have Richard Newton and then you don't have Sean against Oregon, what was it that you really liked about Kamari, the week of practice and whatnot, that gave you confidence in the Wildcat as opposed to maybe someone like Savon?
Yeah, and so they've all had turns at the Wildcat. They all have. And so, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we just kind of thought that he'd do a good job in there. And, you know, but there's nothing like game reps. You know, those game reps kind of change everything, and you're splitting hairs and finding creases quickly and all those type of things. And so, you know, that's the decision that everybody makes, just studying the guys at practice and what they've done in the past. And Kamari has practiced a decent amount, and I think he's even taken some reps in the past. I'm trying to think about that, but he has, even last year, had reps like practicing it and all those things.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Savon has probably not gotten any live Wildcat reps. I think it's been Sean,
Yeah.
Richard, and
Yeah.
But is there just something that you guys like about the other players that?
Well, yeah, there is. Or we wouldn't have put him back there. For sure, there's that. And, you know, all last 4 years, there's been one Wildcat quarterback, and pretty darn good. And so then you got a new situation, and you get 2 guys going down. I mean, now you're trying to figure out what the next best option is. And so that was who we thought the next best option was.
Did you seek or receive any further explanation on the kickoff play?
We had conversations about it, and it is what it is, you know. But yeah, we had some conversations, and
What is it?
can't do it. Yeah, can't do it.
What's the difference between Tyler Huntley this year and last year when you played in week 3 because you didn't play in the second game, I believe?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Tyler Huntley, when you played in week 3 last year, early in the season,
Yep.
and then now this year, how much different is he?
Well, you know, like we were talking about before, you know, just another year of experience and, you know, a lot of good reps under his belt. And, you know, the thing that I see, what I was just talking about, is kind of his pocket presence. And that's one of the things that's always important to us when we pay attention to our quarterbacks. Is like, you know, how do they really like operate in that pocket? And I think that there is an art to that. And I think if you look at the really, really best of the best in the NFL, it is like a work of art in that pocket. And I think college guys, you know, are developing in those areas. But that is one of the areas that I've really noticed about him where I'm, you know, have a lot of respect for him of how he plays in the pocket. And like I said, even though that one of his strengths is being able to run, you know, he does a great job in there. And so that's pretty impressive.
Utah's got the best run defense in the country. What sort of stand?
They have one of the best defenses in the country. So I don't know what the stats are saying and all that stuff, but there's no doubt this is one of the best defenses in the country. They pack the box and they play man coverage and they mix in some zone coverage just to keep you off balance. And, you know, they do a great job. Bring enough blitz pressures to, you know, you got to account for all those different type of things. But at the end of the day, they just can line up with good players, and, you know, guys are trying to make plays downfield, and they don't make many of them downfield because they got some guys who can cover in the secondary, and that's an awesome combination to have.
With Savon, you know, the question going into the season was if he had to, could he carry the load, you know, like Miles did in terms of carries. He's had 47 carries in the last 2 games. What have you seen from his ability just to be durable and kind of consistent?
Well, I thought like we talked about after the game, I thought last game was, you know, a really good game for him where he did, you know, get into a rhythm, and I thought a lot of his reads were good, and, you know, it's kind of slowing down and finding what the correct crease is to hit and trying to fall forward. So that was awesome to see. It was really good progress.
Was there ever an opportunity that you thought Cameron Davis might get carries down the road later in that game?
Yes. Yeah, we had planned, get him involved, obviously. Not a huge part of the game, but to get him going. And so I think he carried twice. And so it wasn't like we want to put him in for 2 carries. Sometimes that's just how those games go. But it was to get him in there. And, like I said, we think he can do some good things. And so we'll just kind of see how this goes.
As the game wore on, especially in that fourth quarter, did you guys ever deliberate and think this might be an opportunity for him to see what he could do?
No deliberation. Keith Bonifay handles that. Bush, all those guys have that plan mapped out before we go into the game, and unless something changes, dramatically, injuries, guy gets really hot, situation of the game, like they have that already thought out. So there's not a whole lot of debating going on. Certainly not debating. I mean, sometimes there might be, hey, I'm going to get this guy in now, and obviously the coordinator, play caller needs to pay attention to that.
You mentioned Jordan Chan earlier. What do you see as his best skill? What is he?
I think that he can run. I think it's probably his best thing. He's fast. He's an explosive guy, and we always really appreciate when he runs. I mean, he goes full speed every time, and then if the ball's around him, he's going to make an all-out effort to get to that ball, whether it's diving, whatever it is. And he's shown that he can make those type of plays. I don't think he's had to do that this year in terms of, but he's done that in practice, and he's been impressive.
What has stood out to you about Terrell Bynum's development?
So same thing. TB has played a lot of, he was really in the mix last year, even though he probably didn't get a ton of snaps. There were situational things that we put him in, but it was one of those guys we just keep talking about, and a lot of reps in practice, and then just kind of waiting for him to do something when we gave him an opportunity that was like, okay. And so, he's had a couple opportunities these last handful of games, and every time we've done something, he's done a nice job. He made a couple really nice catches, even though they weren't like downfield a bunch, but they were, back shoulder, kind of on his hip, and sometimes those are hard, like those little crossing routes, if they're not an upfield number, can be hard to catch. And so he's done a really good job with those things, and he's another guy that we just got to keep going, keep growing.
Hunter Bryant's had some big moments so far. What else would you like to see from him for the rest of the season?
I think he's making good progress. I think our big thing with him was, kind of developing him as a blocker. And there's certain guys you're going to put anchored to the line of scrimmage, and certain guys that are going to, as an H-back type blocker. And I think that's one of the areas that we were really interested in seeing him grow in. And I do think he's making really good progress. And then, we know he can run routes and exceptional hands and all those type of things. And so we just got to, we got some guys, even Cade Otten. I mean, Cade Otten has really good hands. And so I think unique ways to find ways to get those guys the ball with these other receivers that we're talking about, and just keep progressing as an offense. And I think on offense, playing against Oregon last week is a really good defense. There was a lot of strides made on that offensive side, and we just got to keep doing that.
What do you think about the way your front seven's developed?
Front seven on the other side. I think there's some guys in there making really some nice strides. I think Levi Onwuzurike is one of the better D linemen in the conference. I think he can do some things. I think Thule is doing a nice job. I mean, he's a guy that I look at that from the start of the season to now, like, he's improving and getting better. And then I think the other guys are still growing. I do. I mean, I don't think anybody's like taking a step back or anything, but I think those guys, like, you can really see it on tape that has been good.
Hey, Chris, going back to, you guys looked at the films during the break, was any technical thing you saw in any one special unit at all when you guys looked at all the previous games up to here? Or?
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple things, handful of things that it's like, okay, we need to, I think every coach analyzes the heck out of their unit first and foremost, and it's like, okay, what's the 1 to 2 things that we have to do better? And then I think each side of the ball looks at it as a whole, and maybe that's the same thing as some unit improvement. And you just try to figure out how to improve your group. I mean, that's really what it is, your side of the ball, your group. And so certainly everybody has a thing or two that we know that we need to do to take the next step around here. But, I think the one thing that's been always good about the guys around here is, how committed they are to like getting that message. They know. And there's nothing else to do other than study the tape as hard as we ever have and practice as hard as we ever have. And then you're going to improve. And it might not be tomorrow or it might not be the next day, but eventually those that don't back down will get better. And I feel the same. And I think there's certain guys that, are doing an exceptional job of practicing hard, and then they put it on the line in the game, and you can see those guys improve. And, mention some of those guys in here.
With Quinn Pounds, is there an injury situation?
There's not. Again, it's another one of these receivers, that we're talking about. There's not, and I think that's kind of a tough situation. Here's a senior that's done some things for us, and he just really hasn't got back into the mix. But and he was still a little bit banged up a couple weeks ago, but he's kind of played through that, and he's as healthy as he's been. It's okay. Where do you put him in with these other guys? And that's really all it is. But he's working hard.
Going back to your breakdown of your games, on third down conversions, was there anything that you guys could diagnose?
That's a frustrating one because that is something that we look at, and because it's a little bit frustrating in some, it's kind of all broke down. Like your third and really short yardage, you should have somewhere percentage-wise, and then you go to third and mediums, and you should be a little bit lower, so you kind of look at those things. And some of the things that you think you should be pretty good at, we haven't been good enough at. We just really haven't. And so we're trying to figure that out and address that. And, I think one thing, you mentioned it earlier, one thing that might have changed us a little bit on third down is when Rich went down. He's an effective runner in those situations. In those third and medium situations. And so, but we still have a good scheme. We still got guys that can make plays, but we got to get better in those situations for sure.
Timetable for his return?
No, there's not. Like I said, the trainer, he's making progress. The trainers are still monitoring him. He was out there, making some progress yesterday, but there's still not a, hard set timetable even in our mind.
He could miss. He could be done this year.
No, I'm not saying any of that. He's week to week, and like I tell you guys, like if he's done, I'll tell you.
What about McGrew? The same kind of question.
Yeah, he's progress as well.
Chris, when you talked about earlier with Trey and how you kind of almost expect more people because it's not for everyone. With the transfer portal and everything else, is that feeding into this? Where sometimes people see that they have an easier way out?
I think it's all those things, I think it's the world we're living in. I think it's all those things. It's not any one thing. And you're going to see more and more of it. And, I don't look at it necessarily as a bad thing. If it's not the right thing, it's not the right thing. And you move forward.
But do you feel like maybe you dug Sam Strong in a certain way because getting players to come to you, Doug, to help fill out numbers is not as easy as maybe it is at other places?
Yeah, I don't worry about that. I really don't. I think there's enough good players out there in terms of our style of recruiting and how we recruit, and we got enough good players on our team right now. We really do. So that doesn't really factor into, that whole thing. Now, is it another part of college football that maybe certainly a lot of people are, paying very close attention to, and I'm not saying that, our quarterback, I'm not saying you're not going to have one that fits your situation. And when it does, awesome.
And I know that you guys were out recruiting a bunch during the bye week and whatnot. Get a sense for the brand and how things are going on.
I think it's always good. This is an awesome university and, really good football program. And so the reception we get is always awesome.
Is
Bowman, okay, he came out.
He's all, you know, Bo plays 110 miles an hour every snap all the time. And so he's going to be one of those guys that always takes a pounding out there. And so each week, kind of patch him together and away we go.
Did you hear anything from the conference on that last play against Oregon, the fourth down play, the no PI call, I guess?
No.
Is that even something you can hear about?
Yeah, not even something.